How are you guys doing today? Awesome. So, normally someone gets up here and they try to, justify why they're here, and obviously I had a great introduction there. But instead of trying to give all these reasons why you should listen to me, instead I want to talk about how I got on all this, which is history. And particularly, I want to do a quick history lesson. So, looking back in time, there was a field of study that became the leading way of thought of explaining just about everything in the world. There was major universities started that were solely around this study. It was practiced in the White House. It was practiced by the leading thinkers of the time. There were books written about it. It was so pervasive that it was impossible to talk against it. Only one problem: there was no evidence to actually support it. And for those that don't know, what I'm actually talking about is phrenology. So phrenology is the study of size and shapes of skulls and the parts of it. Today we know it as a junk science. But that's because we have the beauty of time, and we have the beauty of history, and we can look back and go, what were they thinking? By the way, people still believe this. And there's a lot more. Here's just a few examples. People believe some of these, people don't. The question isn't if you're right or wrong. You are wrong. The question is, why do people believe these things? See, it's really easy to find people that will tell you what you want to hear and tell you things that confirm what you already believe. But the question is, how do you know if you're in one of these that what you're hearing is true versus what you want to hear? How do you know that you're not in an echo chamber? So this gets down to the question of what do we really know? And what can we apply from the tools we have, our beliefs, our history, our disciplines, our experience? So I always put it this way. Whenever someone is providing evidence to me, my counter-argument is this. Can you prove that it wasn't the alien space lizards trying to take over the world that caused what you just saw? Now, that's my version of Russell's teapot, but it's absurd for a reason. It's absurd because we find reasons to believe something. We don't naturally find reasons to not believe something. And this is important because when we're wrong is where we get all the value. And by the way, it's not alien space lizards. We all know that the squirrel overlords will take over the world here soon. So basically, the core tenet of everything I do comes down to this. There's only two outcomes when you test, when you make an action. Either you're right, which statistically speaking is about 10% of the time, and guess what? You get to feel good, you get a pat on the back, yay, whatever. Or you're wrong. Well, if you're wrong, that means something outperformed what you thought was going to happen. And if it outperformed what's going to happen, that means I make more money. So my question for you is, are you here to try to feel good or try to make more money? And so the key for me is, instead of trying to focus on the first part of this, which is so much of what is out there and so much of how a lot of people operate, how do we focus on the second part? So to do that, we have to change the conversation. And here's where I'm going to lose a lot of you guys, because I very much challenge a lot of the major beliefs. The first one, no more hypotheses. Hypothesis is a statement of what you believe. You can believe whatever you want. It has nothing to do with getting an outcome. Everything you do is about creating a pool. It's about creating beta. It's about seeing as many options as possible. You can include any option you want. The key, however, is to maximize the yield of your actions. And to do that, I have to create the maximum number of opportunities to be wrong, not the opportunity to be right. The second part of this, justification. Now, this doesn't mean all research is wrong, doesn't mean all arguments are wrong. What it means is the goal is to create activity. The goal is to create a discipline. The goal is to create continuous action. The goal is to make sure that you're not worrying about if you're right or wrong. Again, you want to be wrong. The goal is, how do we keep things moving forward to accomplish this? It also means that anything that I think is absolutely true, absolutely verbatim, sacred cows, whatever you want to talk about, that's the first thing you challenge. Whether it's your brand guidelines or longer, shorter copy or the value of your data analysis. Again, being wrong means I get to learn. Being wrong means I made more money. And the last one here is your job, well, next last one, is to not worry about reviewing things. Things don't have to be perfect. Things don't have to make every person in the room happy. I know we all know this, and we get caught in this pattern. But the truth is that any marginal change you make to slightly improve something, slightly decrease something, some feedback process, you don't know if it's good or bad. In fact, it's likely to be bad. So avoid that. One of the things I teach my team and the companies I work with all the time is 80% is far better than 100%. And the last one is discomfort equals success. So I'm going to go through a few examples here in a little while and show you this. But the most important thing is I challenge my team to go beyond their comfort zones. When we test, one of the things we commonly do is we do a voting system. And that means that when we send out what we're testing at a given time, I get people to send in what they think is going to be in first and second place. I get really upset if anyone votes for the winner. Like, really upset. Luckily, it doesn't happen very often. I'll give you an example, though. I had Tuesday, had a series of tests that won in one run, and there was 3 choices picked for the winner, which is out of about 30 people. That was the highest ever for my current company, and it means to me I didn't do my job right, because if we're comfortable with what won, that means that we didn't challenge things enough. So going back to phrenology and different beliefs, my thing is that so much of what we do is about believing that our job is to prove our point, is to prove what we believe, or these individual pieces. But in real life, we don't get gold stars for being right. Your job is to make people money. Your job is to improve performance. And so we're not here to validate ideas. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what gets out of it. I care what the outcome of my actions is. See, I get to be a evidentiary realist. And being an evidentiary realist means that I don't care about your beliefs. I care about what did we go live with and what was the outcome of that. Now, luckily, there's a lot of tools that actually help improve this. And some of them you guys have heard of, some of you haven't. But I'm a math nerd, so I apologize ahead of time. But there's math for that. So instead of focusing on things like hypotheses or your analysis, I focus on things like fragility, which I'm willing to bet a large portion of the people in this room have never heard of, which is simply the power of options. And by knowing the power of options, I can do funny things like figure out that by modeling basic outcomes, and this is, by the way, outperforms, the model I'm using here drastically outperforms industry averages. Again, industry average is about 10%. This is modeling at about 40% success rate. If I test 2 options 100 times, so I run 100 tests, 2 things, or I test 5 options 40 times, or I test 10 options 20 times, guess what? I'm testing 200 options no matter what I do. But my expected outcome, my yield, is 370% better by doing the 10 options 20 times. Now, it doesn't mean that every site can do 10 options. It just means that I have to understand that the more things I look at, the higher the range, the higher the beta, the better my outcomes. The higher likelihood of success, the higher likelihood of a massive win. And so by learning what those sweet spots are, learning what your reality of your situation is, and by challenging those assumptions, you move up and up as far as your expected outcome. So to do this, there's some very basic rules. The first one is all test ideas are fungible. Yes, I know we all have our favorite babies, and we love it when we get to push an idea through, and yay. But the truth is that we're just as flawed as anyone else. Like, we like to yell at the hippo, or we like to yell at so-and-so because they don't agree with us. You're both wrong. Let's go find out. And that's the beauty. It's not me versus them. It's let's go find out. And so if I treat all ideas as fungible, it allows me to build pools, and allows me to start with any idea and say, let's keep going from there. The vast majority of the options we test and the tests we even run, I hate. And by hate, I mean I don't like the looks of it. My favorite joke to my team, and this is dead serious, is if I don't like it, it has a high chance of winning. If I like it, it's doomed. So my goal is to make sure that they're doing this in a way that we treat everything as fungible. Again, I already showed some of the math on this, but it's also an important thing. Action for the sake of action accomplishes nothing. And a lot of us try to count success by how many tests we run, or how often we're testing and those things. I know there's a big hurdle in organizational inertia to fight to get more tests. But the more efficient we are, the higher the yield. And again, going back to what I showed before, I'd much rather run 10 really well-run tests than 100 poorly run tests. And by the way, I'm going to make more money. Everything we do is about efficiency. And what this means is not just about the number of tests you run, But what tests, what options we run, how do we plan tests, how do we get things back into slots, is all based around the resources we have and what can we maximize at that given time. Some of my most successful tests have been things that I've literally jumped in to say optimizely and coded in 10 minutes. Type 1 errors are the worst possible outcome. Now, most of you know what a type 1 error is, not statistics. It just simply means a false positive. I don't mean the math side. The math side is incredibly bad, and I am super cautious about avoiding those. And it's important that you understand all the limitations of confidence, whether you're frequentist or Bayesian. What I mean is, when you draw false conclusions from things, when you try to believe that you know something you don't, when you think something won and it really didn't, you choose actions based off that. You choose a path. And whether you mean to or not, it's going to influence everything you do going forward. And why is this important? It's because you're creating inefficiency in the system. Going back to something else I said in there, you plan your resources, your tests around your resources, not your resources around your tests. So a lot of people try to build these big projects. I want to go do this huge video on my front door, redesign stuff, and yeah, do those things. But that's just a way to see where you're trying to get to. You can never get time back. I'd much rather get a small test up live and do it in the right way than do a huge test that's going to take 6 months. I can be working towards the huge test if I maximize my resources in the meantime. One of the examples I don't show here, but to give you guys an example, the one I mentioned before, about 10 minutes. We tested font on a site, literally just a CSS variable. Huge win, replicated it on 5 sites, and for anyone who wants to know, Comic Sans won. Organization hates Comic Sans, but from a testing perspective, it's font variant number 5. I don't care what it is. What I care about is what the outcome of it is. And the fact that it replicated and we saw it across a huge number of sites, wonderful. There's a pattern. I can play on that. But what I didn't do was storytell. See, storytelling is this amazing thing that is how we pass information. It short-wires people's ability to act rationally. The problem is that last statement. It shortcuts how people act rationally. It puts you back in that phrenology area. What do you really know? Is it the space aliens? Is it what you believed? Is it the 10 billion other possible reasons? I don't know. So any effort to try to storytell, both going in, what I think is going to happen, and what comes out of it, is a waste of my time and yours. We care about efficiency. We don't care about how well you feel about something, your ability to understand it, your ability to feel that you have this perfect understanding of the world. We like being wrong. So I'm going to give you an example real quick of what this looks like. So if anyone's read the original article this is based off, this is the company I used to work for, Malwarebytes. We did a homepage redesign. We planned this test, I think, my second day in the company. We didn't get to this test until 7 months in, and we were running tests the entire time. It would have taken about a month the first time, but again, trying to get constant action. So here's where we started. And as you watch this, I want you to guess what won. If it goes in. So you can see the number of options. We actually started out with 4 more of those, got this cut down before we went live. Obviously, we had a lot of traffic, which helps. I don't know which ones you guys think won, but the correct answer is the pool. I didn't know what was going to win going into the test. I had a lot of beliefs. The one that did win happened to be the third one shown. Not a single person voted for. In fact, this was the one that was picked the most. In fact, there wasn't a single vote anywhere near the one that won. We had 7 different one of these, though, that were positive. So the key here isn't just to get a better answer. It's to get the best answer. What's the highest yield, not what is a good yield? And that's what we're able to do. Now, if I give someone $5 and they give me $6 back, I'm happy. But if I can go to the next person 5 and get 10 back, happier, 20, 30, 40. It's by focusing on the pool and the discipline. It's by getting rid of the storytelling and focusing on the things that really matter to efficiency that we're able to get by that. So another example on my current site, one of my sites, detox.net. So once again, the pool won. 3 of those were positive. The main winner ended up being a ridiculous 80% win. I actually get really uncomfortable when they're that big, so I don't try to promote that, but it's a good example of what's going on. Now, there's a natural problem, though, of everything I'm describing, and it's cognitive dissonance. I'll give you guys a sec. Sorry. See, the problem is when you're wrong, for some reason we get uncomfortable. We're told our entire lives going through school and everything, and people patting our back when you're right. And every time we have a winner, as I said, the one that people didn't like or the one that people thought had no chance of winning is far more likely to win. Well, it constantly puts you in a situation where you're balancing what did I believe versus what actually happened. Cognitive dissonance. And so 99% of my job is dealing with this phenomena. It's dealing with the biases that people have, and it's a deep understanding of that. And if you guys have read some of my work, a lot of focus on biases. And why do people hold those beliefs? Why do they want to be phrenology or flat earthers, whether they realize it or not? And it comes down to this. It's far more comfortable to be in the place where we like to be than to push those boundaries. All the success is actually outside those boundaries, but it's really comfortable when we find people that tell us what we want to hear or tell us that what we're doing is right, or we only look at the things that we want to look at. By doing that, we maximize our chances to feel good. We don't maximize our outcomes. So to make this a little more tangible, though obviously this is an entire methodology, here's some simple rules. Nothing we do is about being right or wrong. I've used right and wrong a lot in this conversation, and they are important concepts, but the test itself is what's better, what's worse. What is the best performer? What is the lowest performer? I can take any idea and put it in here because it's just one of many. And the pool, the beta, is what matters. And by doing that, I don't get into a he said, she said argument. I don't get into, well, you're obviously wrong, blah, 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 here's the reason. So it's like, no, here's the data. We put it live, we didn't argue, it went live, here's what we got. Functions matters more than want. Now, this has a lot of different meanings, but most especially in data. See, people love to find data that they can dive into to prove their point. The classic saying, people use data like a drunk man that uses a light post for support rather than illumination. The problem is that they're using it for their own selfish needs. They're finding a way to get out, to stay in their comfort zone, to not have to deal with cognitive dissonance. And so any request for information, anything that does not have to do with the single success of that test, and that's almost always revenue for the site, you have to prove how you will marginally get better value by adding that data and what the functional information is. Not what you think will happen, not how it proves your point doesn't, because it's a single data point. How's it actually going to help? My job is to focus on outcomes. Other people can have their beliefs, other people can have their disciplines, other people can decide that they really want to focus and they have this absolute belief that this one design is the greatest thing that they've ever seen, it's better than sliced bread. I don't care. I'm agnostic. I'm not judging the idea. I'm not judging the person. I'm focusing on outcomes of it went live, here is the result. So by doing that, it's not a screaming match. It's not a comfort thing. There are groups that are going to be against this no matter what you do. But it's managing that discomfort in a way that's not anti any one person or anti any one idea. All ideas are equal. Everything is equal because I'm not focusing on the ideas. I'm focusing on the outcomes. And this last one may seem a little weird, and it's sometimes hard for our agency friends here, but not everyone in an organization is going to want to deal with this because it is outside their thing. It's outside of them giving up some control over their area of expertise. So my job is to go in and figure out the people that have enough intellectual curiosity or care enough about the company, which is about 1 for every 50 that say they do, and work with them. And by working with them, I'm able to prove a point and see this constant improvement and to get this organic growth throughout an organization. My job isn't to make everyone happy to start with. And again, happiness isn't part of outcomes. Outcomes are part of outcomes. So the goal is to find those 1, 2, 5, 20 people that are really invested in finding the better work and work with them and use them as a catalyst. So to do that, I find those people, and I just don't work with the other ones. I mean, that sounds wrong, and I know that doesn't necessarily get you ahead sometimes in business, and it can be hard as an agency. But success is the measure of success, not happiness is a measure of success, not gold stars as happiness is success, not how many books are out there about a subject. So lastly, I know there was a lot of people wanting some walkaways, and that's not always my strength. So I put a few up here. You can read those. The key things in this is to understand that you need to be firm on discipline. You can be flexible on tactics. The firm on discipline part, though, is understanding those things I talked before. And more than anything, focus on how do I prove myself wrong? How do I use the discipline of building a pool to go against what I believe is right, what you believe is right, what anyone believes is right? Because again, it doesn't matter. The question is, how do I put a framework that we work within so that people are forced to go against their wants and needs and their better nature to get the most out of things, to understand that yield is the only thing I'm focusing on. And so here's a few examples of rules. Different places I've worked have much harder rules. These would be the absolute minimum. I have sites in my portfolio right now that the 7 tests is the minimum. I have sites where 10 tests is the maximum. I have sites where 6 tests is the maximum. The second point here is the most important one. I prioritize tests on the number of options and the beta of those options. Not on my belief in them, not on someone else's belief in them, not even usually even what my boss wants. It's, does this matter, and what is my expected yield? Because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I know what the expected outcome is going to be. So we can look backwards once we have that information and judge it, but that's not my job at the start. I'm choosing action before I do it. And last but not least, again, is plan your resources. Work ahead of time. Make sure that you have a plan to get to where you want to get, but that's not where 100% of the focus is. You cannot get time back. And again, education becomes key because discomfort equals money. If you're right, great, get a pat on the back. If you're wrong, great, I made more money. And that's really what I focus on. And to do that, I have to make people comfortable with discomfort. So I thank you guys.
Thank you. That was awesome. I had goosebumps for part of it. One of the big things I'm focused on also is confirmation bias, and I think you talked a lot about that. So thank you very much. We got a ton of questions, and I think we need to go through some of them because this is going to be interesting. How do you prioritize if you treat all test ideas the same? Don't you end up with 100 test ideas to test?
Hopefully you end up with 500. So again, it comes down to the number of options, how fast I can act on it, and how high the beta I can get the organization to work with. I try to keep a backlog of at least 200 ideas at any given time. I think I'm down to 150 right now, so I need to work on that.
Another one we have here is, rips. There's a couple about the Comic Sans thing. Changing the font to Comic Sans might give an uplift, but it's like to have a negative impact on stuff you don't measure: brand, wrong type of customer, and so on.
Do you have proof? I'm not being a-hole. My point is, like, you're right, it may, and the space aliens might come and take over the Earth. What's your proof? It might also be positive. You don't know. Your belief is one thing, but that's not proof.
There's a couple here. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit greedy here. I'm going to pick one that's not voted as much because I think this is super relevant to what we're talking about now. How do you balance a high number of variations in the test with reaching, well, you might not be dealing with significance here. You could be dealing with a completely different approach.
Well, I'm very aware of significance. I'm absolutely into that. I just think that significance is a massively flawed and not good enough measure, so I tend to be very cautious. So I measure things by the maximum number of options I can test. If a site can only handle 5, I test 5. If a site can handle 12, I'm going to handle 12. By the way, this is about a sweet spot, at least that model I was showing. About 13 is actually the highest yield, just so you know. Depending on, you can model it out. Again, I can help anyone after this with fragility. It's a pretty simple model, and you can figure out what that sweet spot is for you. But I'd much rather have a test go a little longer and get a better answer than just have that. So there's sacrifices. Everything we do is about balancing risk, right? So there's times where we accept higher risk because we have a higher yield. There's times where we accept lower risk because we want to be absolutely certain. So if we don't have a ton of traffic, it just means my beta has to be higher, which means my detection will be higher, which means I'll be able to make a read, even though it's going to have higher statistical noise, even though it's depending on how you look at a Bayesian frequency.
Yep.
But I'll be able to act on that data a lot more. So if I have 50 conversions per group, if one has 80 and one has 20, that's pretty easy to measure. My problem is if it's 55 versus 45 or 52 versus 42. So the beta becomes higher risk. The fewer options you have, the higher the beta, which is counterintuitive to people. The farther you have to go past your comfort zone. If I have more options, I have more room to play in the middle. But that's kind of the key, just keep bigger change.
Yes. If you don't focus on the storytelling, how do you then drum up new ideas for features? Will you end up just running small tests and not identifying new ideas?
So we focus on focus. We say we're going to improve the homepage. We're going to improve the product page. We're going to try new things. We can take any idea. Like I said, they're all fungible. That's the key. It's not that one's good and one's bad. It's they're fungible. One's as good as another. And so what that allows us to do is if we're going to focus on a product page, sometimes we do removal of options. Sometimes we add new options. The question is, how many different options can we come up with? How do we execute on those options, and how do we do that? It's not, this is the thing we're going to think should work. Like, here's the 10 things that we could do. Let's test 6 of them or whatever the maximum is we can based on how wide that range is. And sometimes what you think is a cool new feature works. Sometimes it doesn't. Statistically, it doesn't. But the coolest things, I get to learn that. Obviously, there's some resource constraints there too, but it's just as valid adding brand new features, completely redesigned pages, like I showed you the homepage, than doing these other things. And in fact, the best part is because you're maximizing yield and understanding the math of that yield, you're guaranteed that that action, mostly guaranteed, is going to have a much higher likelihood of outcome than if I just test that idea by itself. So those resources, that time that felt so good to do, to try that, most of the time is actually just wasted effort, where this is a way of maximizing that effort.
Cool. Okay, let's do last one real quick, because there's quite a few votes for it. How do you convince hippos that their opinions don't matter?
So I don't convince hippos that their opinions don't matter. I convince them that they need to be evaluated in a way that's agnostic, and if they're right, great, everyone's happy. If they're wrong, they're doing that. So my job isn't to argue with them about the value of the idea. My job is to argue with them about the best way to learn and optimize. They're not hiring me to argue with their idea. They're hiring me to get them money for the best outcome. And so if by changing that conversation and focusing on the outcome and not just the inputs, you find a lot more leeway to work with them.
Thank you so much for being here.